Americano newspaper. Best newspaper in analysis in the state of Illinois. With over 20,000 copies in each edition, El Sueño Americano is available in all versions. El Sueño Americano Lake County, El Sueño Americano Pilsen, El Sueño Americano Southeast, El Sueño Americano Aurora, and sooner in many more regions. El Sueño Americano, the other side of news. The best analysis in regional, state, and national politics. El Sueño Americano is your alternative information in championnews.net. The conservative voice for Illinois news and commentary on education, pensions, and politics.
Hello and welcome. Today with the bottom line, this is Deb Gordills. And I'm really excited. You know, it wasn't until I just started thinking about it that I realized, look, every ward, every one of the 50 wards in Chicago is up for re-election. Every alderman of the 50 wards of Chicago is up for re-election. That's right. So we are going to start collecting signatures in August in all 50 wards to get those signatures prepared and provided to the Board of Elections to see how many of the 50 ward aldermen will have an opponent. Now, the Board of Elections decides if they're going to have an opponent, not you by signing that piece of paper. Step one is you sign that petition sheet. Step two is the Board of Elections says whether or not you're worthy of signing that petition sheet and whether or not they're going to allow your signature to stand and be a voice for signing that petition sheet. And then hopefully the Board of Elections will allow your signature and your voice to be heard, and you will have a choice in your ward between the guy who's been running it or gal who's been running it for a long time and the newcomer that's coming on board. And my hope for the city of Chicago and all the people of the city of Chicago is that every 50 of the wards has a choice to either keep the guy who's been the alderman there as the incumbent or to bring on somebody on board that's new and refreshing with hopefully good ideas. Right now, I want to bring onto my show someone who's a campaign manager for one of those aldermanic races. This is Sharon Bryson. Sharon Bryson, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, Sharon. And I know we've been going back and forth on the phone and talking about different things, but right now we're going to get nitty-gritty with the details of your candidate. And so you are the campaign manager for Dorian Maricus. And Dorian Maricus is running for the 7th Ward Alderman. Tell me where the 7th Ward is at.
The 7th Ward is on the south side of Chicago. It extends the ward begins at 71st and Gate, and it extends all the way to 106th and Torrance, weaving in and out with different communities, intertwining with some of the 10th Ward. So,
yeah. And who's the Democrat committeeman in the 7th Ward? Natasha Hall. And she happens to be the appointed alderman there presently, right?
Yes. That's correct.
And when did she get appointed? In March, I think you said, of 2013?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so you have the 7th Ward alderman who just got appointed, was previously the Democratic committeeman there. The Republican committeeman there right now is Juan Antonio Diaz. And so he is a 7th Ward Republican committeeman. Tell me a little bit about that community. Ethnically, what's the breakdown there?
Well, ethnically, it's majority African Americans with 15% Mexican population, and there's Polish population and Haitian. It's pretty well diverse.
Okay, so the Hispanic population, of course, is conservative. That's why they voted for Juan Antonio Diaz to become the 7th Ward Republican committeeman. Is your candidate conservative, a conservative candidate?
Well, yes, he is conservative. But
and do you think that reflects, but do you think that go ahead.
Should be able to vote freely.
Absolutely.
Chicago is very heavily Democratic, Republican, Green Party, Independent, their own parties. So the job of Ms. Maricus is to infuse all of those and just work as one board.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the aldermanic seat, the aldermanic position is to serve the entire community, no matter what the community makeup is. It's to serve the entire community. But it seems to me that it's important that people understand what are the social values or just the fiscal values as well, but the values of that particular person that they are going to vote for to lead their community. And this is where you don't have to define party, but I think you have to define your values and the principles you stand on. Are you a person who supports family traditions? And if you are that conservative person who supports family traditions, then you look for those voters in that ward to come out and vote for a leadership that represents their values, don't you think?
Oh, I definitely agree. Mr. Maricas is 100% about values, family values. He's about uplifting people, period. And I couldn't agree with you more.
And now, is he a believer? Because on my radio show, I'm not afraid to shout amen.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you there. What did you say?
I said, is he a believer? Because on my radio show, I'm not afraid to shout amen.
Yes, he is a believer.
Okay, you know what? People, might think, oh, that's so corny, or that's so, and they laugh or they think, oh my God, we're talking about religion and politics. Hell yeah, we are. Let me tell you why. Because you cannot have a leader who's going to be the Pied Piper and run us all over a cliff, which so many of these aldermanic leaders in all of these wards throughout Chicago have ran us over a cliff.
I agree. Oh my goodness, I couldn't agree with you more. And that's why I think that that is one of the reasons why Mr. Maricas is running. He wants to bring back moving people away from government assistance, learning how to work on our own, learning how to work with each other. Because once we work with each other, then we depend on each other. Not so much government assistance, not so much handouts, not so much things that other politicians want to try to force down our throats. I couldn't agree with you more, Dad. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that people need to understand that. I think it's very important that people understand that once a political party sells you short and does not represent your values, then you should no longer support them. And I believe that that's true about the disappointment and the failed promises that we have gotten from the Democratic leadership in Chicago. And so many of the poor communities or the middle class communities have been just sucked up into a vortex of nothing because they are not being represented. And so overwhelmingly, you have 50 aldermen, and at one time only one alderman was a conservative Republican-leaning alderman. Now all 50 are Democratic aldermen who are carte blanche, blindly raising their hand and voting yes to anything that the mayor says, and the decisions the mayor has made has been to ignore so many communities.
I personally agree with that. And I find it very interesting how a nonpartisan party is so heavily shifted to one party.
Yeah. Well, because this nonpartisan position is just a smokescreen for don't tell people anything. Just tell them that they need to just, vote same old. Here's the part that scares me, and maybe this should scare you, and we should talk about this more on the next segment, is there are over a dozen zip codes on the south side where there are over 10,000 fraudulent ballots, excess ballots, additional ballots, 10,000 additional ballots that arrive at the polling places down there. And David Orr, the Cook County clerk at the Board of Elections, says we need to trust them that, yes, they could activate them, and yes, they can vote on them, and yes, they could be fraudulent used, but they promise that's not going to happen.
I disagree with that.
Yeah.
Hey, come on, we all know that there's housing issues especially on the south side of Chicago. You know that there's different people who are now moving in because unfortunately they cannot afford to keep their homes. So you know these houses are abandoned, and so you know for a fact that they're using these addresses. And just like you just spoke on, I agree.
So what? How does that? I mean, look, you are spending so much time and energy and money to run for this office to represent the community. How does the community and your candidate and your campaign as the manager feel when you got the possibility of having this election stolen from you with just a handful of those votes?
Well, we've spoken about that numerous times in our camp, and unfortunately, we will feel very disrespected, and we will feel very, very, very upset about that. And the good thing about all of this is that Mr. Maurikas has already won. And I'm going to explain to you why he's already won. Mr. Maurikas is currently in the process of completing his prospectus. And this is a 2-year-long legal document that he has created to bring to the 7th Ward, to bring different things to the 7th Ward, to the community, to the 7th Ward, period. And so, regardless if the election is stolen from him or not, Mr. Maurikas has already won, and I understand what you're saying, and we have the same concern.
So you're saying that the victory comes in the ability of the community to gather and to make changes and decide in spite of a failed leadership at the helm that may win an election. Because a lot of people are thinking they don't even care about elections anymore. They don't even want to bother with that. They want to assembly, have the freedom of assembly to congregate, to get together, and to demand changes within their community. So it's almost like they're going to have to bypass all of these fake elections with all these fake elected leaders, because these are not real results due to the voter fraud, and just going to have to gather and demand changes in their respective communities.
Well, no, I'm not saying that. What I think is that we need to...
That's funny, because I was saying that.
If these things are happening, we need to get a legal team that is not afraid of the city of Chicago, and we need to challenge them. Everyone is so afraid of the mayor. Everyone is so afraid.
Why are they afraid? Why are they afraid?
I don't know. I'm not afraid.
Because you're a woman, and women are tough.
Why a lot of our other leaders are, city services may be cut off. They may lose their employment. They may even lose their lives. They may even lose their families. So,
listen to this. You just said that they might lose their lives and lose their families. I mean, think about what you just said against the government of Chicago, that these people, the mayor's office, and the people surrounding them are so powerful that they could destroy the lives of people who speak out against them. If that, in fact, is true, and there's always some half-truths in things that are said, I mean, we should all be very concerned.
I am concerned, and we as people should be concerned, and you're right.
You know what, Sharon, we're going to come back after these commercials with more on this discussion about the upcoming Chicago aldermanic races in the 50 wards. You've been listening to Deb Gordills, and my guest today is Sharon Bryson, the campaign manager for the 7th Ward aldermanic candidate, Dorian Maurikas. I'm going to learn to pronounce his name right. All right, we'll be right back after these commercials.
Sueño Americano newspaper. Best newspaper in analysis in the state of Illinois. With over 20,000 copies in each edition, El Sueño Americano is available in all versions. El Sueño Americano Lake County, El Sueño Americano Pilsen, El Sueño Americano Southeast, El Sueño Americano Aurora, and sooner in many more regions. El Sueño Americano, the other side of news. The best analysis in regional, state, and national politics. El Sueño Americano is your alternative information in championnews.net, the conservative voice for Illinois news and commentary on education, pensions, and politics.
Welcome back. I'm Deb Gordills, and you're listening to Chicago Political Talk Radio here out of Chicago. And we have the big aldermanic races all coming up. In August, that's in less than 2.5 months here, everybody, we are going to start seeing people collecting signatures in 50 wards to run for 50 aldermanic seats. And it is so important to have the ability to have a real election race between two candidates. And half of these 50 wards have always ran unopposed. Nobody challenges the leadership there. We know we do not have 25 leaders and 25 wards that do absolutely amazing things for their wards. And if they do, hopefully we're going to start seeing some commercials or some kind of activity that shows that. But right now, the goal is to make sure that there is a race in 50 wards, and we need to find 50 candidates. And one of the candidates that stepped up is Dorian Myricus, and Dorian is running for the 7th Ward aldermanic seat. He's running against Natasha Holmes, who was appointed by the Democratic Party in 2013. And why is it, if this is a bipartisan position, why is it that not both the Republican Party, the Green Party, and the Democratic Party decide who's going to be the alderman? Because it's not a bipartisan position. It's, yeah, they serve everybody, and they say it's bipartisan, but it's completely controlled by a one-party system in Chicago, and that is the Democrat Party. And they decide who, and they decide what, and they decide when. And it doesn't matter what you, the voter, says or what you, the voter, wants in your community. When it comes to the alderman, that's completely controlled by the Democratic Party. Now, in the last segment, we talked about what are we going to do to minimize, because you're not going to eliminate voter fraud in Chicago, not today, and maybe not even in our lifetime. But we can do something to minimize it. And one idea that I have for you, Sharon, is that you have a person, a volunteer from the community who's bipartisan, who just wants to see fair elections in every single place that a vote is going to be casted, and have them counting the adults walking in the door. Have them have the adults walking in the door. So important, because I will tell you what you're going to find. You're going to find 227 persons walk in the door who could possibly vote, and then you're going to see about 351 votes counted there.
I agree.
That is shameful. That is shameful that in a democracy, in a city like Chicago, third largest city in America, we have blatant, outright fraud. That 225 people walk into a polling place to vote, and then the local government and Board of Election tells us that 350 casted a vote. And so
that's crazy. I agree.
It is crazy. And so what we need to do, just to minimize it, because the absentee ballots are also ballots that they hold there. They can launch, a couple thousand absentee ballots in a heartbeat. And you have no clue, other than they were absentee ballots, how they were obtained, who were the people who filled them, if there's a follow-up. I mean, it's like 100 ways to steal a vote in Chicago. But at least watching the polls to see how many walk in, how many voting adults walk in the door, and what the number on that receipt says casted their vote at the end of the day. You're going to have to do that in over 60 possible places in each ward where they vote. Now, isn't that another crazy thing? Why do we need 60 places to vote?
I mean, I agree, because when you look at it, during early voting, we don't have that many places.
No, and it works just fine.
Voting, we have one place per ward.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? They have one place to vote in each ward, but during the election, they have 60. Do you know why? I believe this is the Deb theory on why they need 60 places to vote on election day in a ward, but yet only one during early voting. And the reason they have those 60 places is because if Dorian starts winning that race, they got to just take 3 from here, 5 from here, 10 from there, 6 from here, 2 from there. Exactly. They've got 60 places to make you go in the cuckoo maze where you're going to figure out where those 60 votes or 100 votes or 300 votes comes in. That's the reason why Channel 7, Channel 5, Channel 2, and Channel 9 with their awesome election board central always makes me laugh. The election central will say, oh, 98% of the precincts came in. So-and-so's winning. We're waiting for 2%. And then it takes like 10 hours for the last 2 precincts or 3 precincts that come in.
Exactly.
And then it's the opposite result. Or it just pads up the lead so much more. It's ridiculous. It's like, hello, folks. Did the machines break down? Did somebody steal them? Did they never make it to the board? Why is it? I remember 3 or 4 candidates running for Republican ward committeemen were winning by a dozen or 2 dozen votes with only 2% of the precincts yet to report. And every one but one lost. As a matter of fact, the only guy who won was Juan Antonio Diaz of the 7th Ward, the ward you guys are running. He won, and you know how much he won by? 1 vote. Who wins by 1 vote?
Oh.
That, you know what? That wasn't a 1 vote victory. That was a message. That was a message from the people counting the ballots. That's their pathetic sense of humor at the Board of Elections. We stole all these other races from you, but we're going to give you one, and we're going to give it to you by 1 vote, and we're not going to challenge that 1 vote, because, you can have a recount.
Exactly.
If you went under 2% with only 2% of the vote difference, you can have a recount. Not a word. That was a 1 vote message. And the message is that every Chicago voter is a sucker for thinking that their vote counts, because it's all rigged, and it's rigged against the people. It's the people, the community, those representing the community, those not representing by party, those independents, and those who have conservative values. You don't stand a chance, and you need to say something. You need to say something, because if you don't say something, it's going to continue to happen, and that's why we have this show, and that's why we're saying what we're saying. So now, Sharon, tell me, besides now trying to get somebody at each of those 60 doors on election day to count how many people are walking in, what is more of the game plan? Where can people in the 7th Ward or other people say, we like what we're hearing here about Dorian and Sharon, and we want to help them and get in touch with them? Where can they get in touch with you?
Well, they can visit the website. The website is www.dorian, DORIAN, the number 7th Ward, WARD.org. They can contact us at our ward office at 312-521-0474. Or they can contact me directly, 312-774-2408.
Great. And we're going to give that information again at the end of the show today. Sharon, tell me, what other wards are you working with? And is it important to work with other wards around you? Or do you feel just getting the organizations in place in the 7th Ward is the route to go? What's your overall strategy? What are you thinking?
Well, I think that all of those strategies are important. We're right now getting our organization together, and we're also working with different groups in 10 and 5 and 8. So I think that once a lot of people get the fear out of stepping up to the plate, you're going to see more good candidates stand up to the plate and come out and say, hey, you know what, I'm not afraid to run. I'm going to go ahead and do this. We have support from the 7th Ward or the 10th Ward or whichever other wards surrounding them. So we're always looking to bridge with many different people that's coming out, because we understand how being a non-incumbent could be threatening, could be intimidating. So we work with a lot of people who may either want to run, thinking about running, and things of that sort.
Yeah, this is so darn important, and to build these coalitions, and I'm going to tell you why. Because the Democratic Party controls every leader of every ward in Chicago right now. That's the 50 leaders, the entire city council sitting there staring at the mayor and waiting to be told by the mayor how they should vote. They don't represent the community. They represent the mayor. So community leaders are not wanted as elected officials for each of their wards and their communities and their neighborhoods, because they need the guy who's just going to sit there and the only one he answers to is the mayor's office. And keeping this in mind, it's very important that you develop these coalitions, because I will tell you what happens. The Democratic Party is going to look at the 50 wards, and if there's only 10 people stepping up to run, in 10 wards. The other 40 wards send their soldiers and their political organizations and their money into those 7 wards to crush the opponents.
I agree.
Because they are each watching each other's back. So everybody who runs as an alderman in the upcoming aldermanic race is not just running against the leadership in their ward. They are running against the entire Democratic Party of Chicago, and they will have every other ward coming after them.
I agree.
It is an undaunting task. I don't think our listeners realize how difficult an effort it is that you are about to embark on as you run for alderman in Chicago.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. We're ready, and I agree with you 100%. That's why, just like you said, coalitions are very important, and we have to be dedicated, and we have to be fearless. We have to join forces and just be strong together. That's
right. And I love your attitude about it. Did you know that I ran for alderman?
Where?
Yeah, guess where? I ran for alderman in the 33rd Ward against Dick Mell.
Did you? When did you do that?
In 2003, I ran against Alderman Dick Mell right after he when he was right involved in the election of Rod Blagojevich, because that's his son-in-law. So everybody's thinking, are you crazy? You're running against a guy who just got the governor elected, and you're going to run against him for alderman? And I was like, well, I'm in his ward. If I want to run for alderman, I got to take him on.
Right.
And, I only took 14% of the vote, but it was really an interesting story, and I'll share a little bit more about it when we come back after these commercials. But right now, we're going to have to go to commercial break. So if you want to hear a little bit about my aldermanic race against Dick Mell, stay tuned. We'll be right back after these commercials.
Sueño Americano newspaper. Best newspaper in analysis in the state of Illinois. With over 20,000 copies in each edition, El Sueño Americano is available in all versions. El Sueño Americano Lake County, El Sueño Americano Pilsen, El Sueño Americano Southeast, El Sueño Americano Aurora, and sooner in many more regions. El Sueño Americano, the other side of news. The best analysis in regional, state, and national politics. El Sueño Americano is your alternative information in championnews.net. The conservative voice for Illinois news and commentary on education, pensions, and politics.
Hello and welcome back to The Bottom Line. This is Deb Gordills, and I am here with the Chicago Political Talk Show with a special guest, Sharon Bryson, who is the campaign manager for Dorian Myricus. And he is running for 7th Ward Alderman, a family man who believes in traditional family values for his community, a conservative who wants to see his community do well, who has spent the last 2 years coming up with strategic plans on making the community better, which makes him a winner already. But to see him challenge the mayor and see that 7th Ward aldermanic seat light up in the city council would be a blessing to all of us viewing, whether we live in the 7th Ward or not. So Sharon, I really hope to God that you guys have a successful campaign. But I know, as I said before I left for the commercials, I know how difficult it is because in 2003 I ran for alderman myself against Dick Mell. And it started exactly pretty much how probably your political career started. You just decided, at least I did, and I think a lot of people do this, is you could sit at home and continue to whine and complain about the process, or you can get in and do something about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so I just decided I'm going to do something about it. And knowing absolutely nothing about the political structure, I said, well, I'll just run for office, like student council or something. And I didn't even know who my alderman was. That's how out of the loop I was in terms of the political, local politics. And I remember calling up the City Hall 311 line and saying, hi, I said, I'm interested in finding out who's my alderman. And she said, sure, what's your address? And so I told her the address, and she said, she goes, you got the powerful alderman Dick Mell. And I started to chuckle, and I said, oh, yeah. I said, oh, wow, that's going to make my job hard. She goes, why? What's your job? I said, I'm going to run against him for alderman. And then she started to laugh really hard. And she said, well, good luck with that. And I said, thank you. And I'm sure that she mentioned that to everybody at City Hall that day, the call she had just gotten. And so I found out what I needed from the election board. And I went out and I started collecting signatures and I started campaigning. And he challenged my signatures to get me off the ballot because he had never had anyone get on the ballot successfully in over 20 years of his political career. He was able to knock off every single person who ever tried to run against him. And I was on that list. But I am happy to say he could not kick me off. My signatures were way, I had like 300% more signatures than I needed. And they were very valid because I personally went to door to get most of them. But he kept me in the challenge with the attorneys for 42 days.
Oh, my goodness.
It was the longest challenge to a candidate's petition sheets in the history of the city. So I have that going for me in terms of a title. But I got on, and
backwards and forwards.
yeah, I got on, and it was crazy. He even had off-duty police officers come and take pictures of my house while I was home, walking my dog, and he denied it, of course. He did not deny that he didn't tell them to get pictures of me. He said he didn't tell them to do it in their police uniform while they were working. So it was really interesting. And I mean, you know, as a side note, I laughed. I got to meet Dick Mell later on because he actually came to my house at our block party because he wanted to meet me with Dick Mell T-shirts to hand out. And, you know, I just said, you know, I could probably always have a beer and laugh with you, but there's no way that I could ever work with you. We're cut out of two different fabrics. But yeah, that was it. That's where I got all my experience. Talk about diving into the deep end and learning how to swim really fast in politics was that whole experience as I watched my election and my campaign unfold. And so I'm telling you when I say you need to line up people at every polling place to get the number coming in and then the number that's reported, it is so crucial in minimizing vote fraud. And I do say minimizing because we're going to have to do away with the entire process that we have right now before we can do it. And this is not, it's a huge problem in Illinois, definitely a real big problem of credibility for those candidates who do win in Chicago or in the state. But, you know, we have this problem across the country because we don't even have voter ID laws that are enforced.
But Deb, let me ask you a question. How would you feel about being able to vote on the internet?
That's insane. That's insane. It's extremely hard to find out the realities of who's on the internet because anyone can make up a fictitious name, fictitious address, age, all of that data. The computer has no idea. Look at all the Facebook page, all the Instagrams, all the Twitter accounts, even all the comments on all of the news online websites, and they have like no picture or a picture of some avatar thing. And then they don't even, you know, they're called like Anonymous Joe or, you know, Tired of It Sam or, you know, Don't Do It, you know, Tim. I mean, it's just crazy. These are their names. These are, you cannot do that.
Well, see, maybe we can have a process where you're able to go to actually fill out the paperwork to register, but you can actually possibly vote.
I'm telling you, the only way to do it right now to improve the vote is, first of all, you don't need more than 5 places in a ward where the vote's going to be counted.
That's true.
You get a piece of paper and a pencil, and you have a person with a shotgun standing right next to that box.
I agree.
And then you count it. At the end of the day, you count it.
So why do you think there's so many polling places in each ward? I mean, why?
To steal the vote. To steal the vote. To cause complete chaos. And right now, the national effort to go online is just a way to control all the people of America. Listen, the only way you can control us is if you have the wrong leadership guiding us in the wrong direction. And even then, what you have is you're going to have a rebellious group. Now, I don't know if you saw the Paul McKinley tape recently that went through pundit and it went viral online, where Sharpton came to hold a community meeting for Obama, and the people, African American people on the South Side and the West Side, really took it as an opportunity to let Obama know that he left them stranded, that he did not deliver on all his empty promises. And they were there at this meeting to collect that debt. And it was amazing to me. I played it on my show. I've had Paul McKinley on my show. There was a woman who was on that tape too, who I would love to get on my show. She just seemed like she and I were just sisters from a long time past. We had just the same type of, energy and request and passion about it. But, what is your thought on that? I mean, I really believe that it's going to have to be in the hands of the community and the people to demand that those voting machines and those 60 voting machines in every single ward. There are 50 wards with 60 voting machines in each that are all questionable in terms of the results. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what's your thought? Because I think online is just a way to ruin everything, ultimately ruin everything.
I just brought it up because I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago about that, and like you said, I think that the first thing that we need to do is eliminate a majority of the polling places. So as we spoke earlier, why is it only one polling place during early voting and then numerous places to vote during the regular voting period? And that's the first thing that I think needs to happen immediately. And and the forum that Mr. McKinley had attended at Hyde Park High School? Yeah. Yeah, I was there. I was there.
Okay.
And it was very interesting. It was very interesting, and
I saw all age groups there. I saw people from all walks of life there, and they all were tired and disappointed with the Obama administration and what was going on in their communities. What was your take from all that?
I mean, we are tired. I mean, we are tired of what has came up. We are to the point where we are fed up, and I think that there's a lot more people who want to do. Because, see, there's a difference between crying about being fed up and actually doing something. We've had cried as a community, we've cried as a people for so long. Now, there has to be a movement where we have to come up and we have to stop talking about it. Now we have to put the plan into action.
And so what is that plan? What is that plan? Like what do we put into action? Okay, I've said we need poll watcher soldiers, definite. And maybe we need attorneys to question the validity of 60 places to vote in every ward. Maybe we need an immediate injunction from a court, a federal court, saying that all of that together combined, all of these processes and all this practice really lead to taking away our right to a fair electoral process. And maybe that's what we need. I think we need a combination of all of that. And I think we need to shout out that, we demand change and we demand accountability.
I agree. We need to get a legal system who is going to be behind us to really push it forward to help us. Like I said previously, there's attorneys, and we've even spoken to a few of them, where we would tell them what's happening, and they have even told us that they have pushed forward, and nothing has came from it.
Yeah, so you got lawyers saying that they've tried.
Or they've either gotten paid off. We need to find people who are not easily to be paid off.
Yeah.
Money cannot keep on controlling Chicago. And that's about money controls Chicago, and who has the most of it has the most power.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to announce that there are a lot of people with money in Chicagoland who do not believe in that kind of tyranny way of doing politics, and they would like to see a new mayor. They're all pushing right now, trying to get a new governor, and hopefully we'll see some changes. And so on that little positive note, we're going to go to another commercial, and we'll see if when we come back on the next show, we can have Dorian Myricus, although I'm having a great time with you, Sharon Bryson, and if we don't have time, we'll invite him for a second show. But you've been listening to Deb Gordills, and my guest today is the campaign manager for the 7th Ward Aldermanic candidate, Dorian Myricus, and this is Sharon Bryson, and we'll be right back after these commercials. Thank you.
Sueño Americano newspaper. Best newspaper in analysis in the state of Illinois, with over 20,000 copies in each edition. El Sueño Americano is available in all versions. El Sueño Americano Lake County, El Sueño Americano Pilsen, El Sueño Americano Southeast, El Sueño Americano Aurora, and sooner in many more regions. El Sueño Americano, the other side of news. The best analysis in regional, state, and national politics. El Sueño Americano is your alternative information in championnews.net, the conservative voice for Illinois news and commentary on education, pensions, and politics.
Hello and welcome back. This is Deb Gordills. You've been listening to Chicago Political Talk Radio here on 1590 AM. If you're in Chicago, 1470 AM if you're near Indiana. And also you'll hear the show again from 5 to 6 p.m. And 8 to 9 p.m. on 1500 AM on RadioLatina5.com. So I have Sharon Bryson, the campaign manager for the 7th Ward Aldermanic candidate. They start collecting signatures in August. We have 2 months to find the 50 candidates, and hopefully on my show I'll have a list for you when August begins of where we have candidates that are out collecting signatures. We are compiling a list right now as we speak in conjunction with Jack Roser and the political efforts that we put forward in vetting candidates and finding candidates. And as always, we are a conservative talk show, and so we look for candidates who have social conservative values. Because the family is so important. Talk to me, Sharon Bryson, a little bit about the families in the 7th Ward. What are some of their struggles? Sharon?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So what are some of the struggles that you see, your campaign team, that Dorian has seen in terms of families of the 7th Ward?
The struggles of the families and the 7th Ward is the main thing that we have been seeing is the overall health of the families in the 7th Ward. You got to understand, there's not a grocery store in the 7th Ward.
Stop. You're telling me you don't have a grocery store in the 7th Ward?
No.
Oh, I do not. Okay. All right now, listeners, all of you have to be outraged, because you gave me those boundaries of the 7th Ward, and there is not a single grocery store to buy food in the 7th Ward.
There is not a solidified grocery store. There are smaller grocery stores.
You mean like the little mom and pop's convenient places?
Those are right. Those are more like...
That's not a grocery store. You don't have Walmart or Sam's Club.
We don't have a Jewel. We don't have a Dominic's. Of course not. We don't have a Dominic's any longer. The closest Dominic's we had is in the 5th Ward, but they closed that down, and they haven't even brought anyone for that. We don't have anything in the 7th Ward.
Oh my God! This is crazy. Okay, listeners, I know that you're all shocked too to hear this. There is okay, can I just tell you that on that issue alone, you should win the election. The fact that the failed Democrat stronghold ward leadership has failed the 7th Ward because you don't have a grocery store. Did you guys ever have a grocery store?
So how could you expect a child to get up in the morning to go to school and say, for instance, they don't have anything in the house real quick to fix? How could you expect that child to get the proper education on Crusty Curls and hot flaming chips in the morning? How could you expect a child to go to get the proper education? That's the first biggest issue, because if you do not have your health in order, you can't be productive.
Okay, you have to tell me why. Why would Jewel or Walmart not want to be in the 7th Ward? Why?
Well, I believe that they don't want to be in the 7th Ward because a lot of times it has not been presented to them to come to the 7th Ward.
What do you mean? Jewel needs permission before they can set up a grocery store in your ward?
The mayor has it to where the alderman everything has to go through the alderman. You know that. So I believe that.
I know that, but my listeners don't know that.
The past administration has not allowed them to come. The alderman does not have any vision. The alderman does not want our community with anything, because when you think about it, if our community does not have anything, then that means that the current administration can keep on leading the community of what we don't already have.
But wait a minute. Are you all apartment buildings down there in the 7th Ward? What's the...
I didn't hear you. What you said?
Are you all apartment buildings in the 7th Ward? Is this just a bunch of buildings?
You were muffled. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you there.
I said I'm trying to get a lay of the land, because the 7th Ward is really far from me. You're down on the southeast side of Chicago. And I'm trying to figure out, you're on the lakefront though too, aren't you? Or you're down...
We are. And that's where that big lakeside development is coming at. It's a multi-billion-dollar project.
Oh, so they're going to put a grocery store there?
Yeah, of course they're going to put a grocery store there when they change the demographics and when they go through gentrification. Of course, that's when they're going to do it, because they're going to push all of the residents that are currently there out.
Oh.
And we are not going to allow that, because now you're not being fair now. Because now you're giving other communities or other people the opportunity that people who were born and raised there does not have the opportunity, especially with them between the ages of 10 to 30.
Yeah, okay, I could see what's happening. So the development of all of the lakefront property, all from Chicago south as far as it goes down to Indiana,
Exactly.
is being sucked up.
Dorian has a vision and a plan outside of that lakeside development. They're talking about this lakeside development being between a 30 to 40 year project development. I mean, I pray to God I'm still here, but my whole thing is, what's going to happen in between those 30 to 40 years?
People need to eat. They need a grocery store to open up like yesterday.
Thank you. I agree, and that's what we're in the process of doing. We're in the process of speaking to local grocers.
Sharon, how many years have you been there in the 7th Ward?
I have been in the 7th Ward for 20 years.
For 20 years. And has there ever been a grocery store there? In the 20 years you've been there, have you had a Jewel food store or something like that there?
I've had to go outside the community, no.
No, so in the 7th Ward has not had a grocery store for 20 years?
No.
What the? Okay, something's very wrong with that. This is what gets me going. What gets me going is the very Democratic Party that you hear Biden and Obama and Pelosi talking about, that is supporting the poor and supporting the disadvantaged and helping communities. Where the hell's the grocery store in the 7th Ward, Pelosi? Where the heck is the grocery store in the 7th Ward, Biden, Mr. Biden, Vice President?
You know how they call themselves trying to help our community by keeping us under their thumbs with what? Government assistance, with Section 8 to people who don't necessarily need it. That's the way that they're keeping their thumb on our communities, I feel.
That's right. A lot of people think that people get on this assistance because they want to, like they look forward to it. That is not the case. They move into this because of survival. They need to survive.
And no, that's not the case. That's not the case. Our people want to work. Our people want better housing. And I think that our people deserve it.
Yes.
I think that our people, just as people all over the city of Chicago, deserves better.
Yes. Well, then who the heck is the Democratic Party talking about that they're helping? Because if they don't have a grocery store for the last 20 years and they control Chicago, but for the last 20 years, that very group that wants to help the poor doesn't have a grocery store in the 7th Ward.
They're helping themselves because they're allowing other stores, smaller, you want to call them convenience stores or whatever you want to call them, they're getting their funding from these stores who are coming into our communities, selling the crunchy curls, selling the loose squares, selling the drugs off the back of the community, selling guns, and selling other things that our community don't need, prostituting our young women, prostituting males.
Unbelievable.
It's a ring of things within the 7th Ward and within other communities on the South Side that needs to be unveiled and needs to be put to a stop.
That is horrible. It is shameful that the community has been completely depleted of anything that is good. It is just, you know what? I mean, only God knows what has been going on down there. And I'm grateful once again that someone like you has come on my radio show to share with the listeners what is going on in Chicago, because a lot of people on the north side don't know what's happening on the west side or on the southeast side. And we need to know. We need to become informed. We can only make changes, and when we become informed, when we're an educated population. The more, information is power, and you've just empowered all the listeners. So I want to thank you. You've just empowered all the listeners, and you've empowered me with information.
I mean, shows like yours are extremely important, and I commend you as well for having the courage and the guts to have a show like this. Speak the real truth and speak to people like me, and you'll be speaking to Dorian and who really care about the community.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you two things that a lot of people don't know. I don't get paid for this show. I'm volunteering to do this show, and I didn't even ask to have a show in Chicago, a radio show. I got a call from a producer that said, "We have a spot for you that's paid for." And we want you to just do a show. And I said, well, I only know how to talk politics because that's what I'm involved in and what we work on. But I know a lot of people who are involved in it who would probably come on the show and talk about their work and their efforts and what they're trying to do. And we're all just trying to make the world a better place. We're just trying to really be fair. That's what I tell everybody. At the end of the day, I just want it to be fair. I don't want to win. I hate losing, I'll be honest with you. But I like fair. I like equal. I like breaking even. But man, I'm really, sincerely, I want to say to you as a person who's been in Chicago for the last 20 years with the great fortune of living in a community where I have grocery stores across the street from each other. I have a Jewel and a Mariano's across the street from each other. And just 3 blocks away, I have a Costco, and I have at least 4 or 5 Aldis, and this is all just in one ward. And so I want to apologize to you on behalf of all of us who had no idea what the 7th Ward has been going through. And I should have known more about it, because we did have a Republican candidate that we backed up in there in the 7th Ward, and I'm going to hook you up with him so that you guys can work together as conservatives, because he does care about families. He's new, he just won election recently too, so maybe he's just coming into the light. But you said you have a Hispanic population, a Mexican population, along with an African American, and so between the two of you, defending and stepping up for the people of that ward. I know I'm going to post about it, and I'm going to push the subject, and I want everybody, all 3,000 followers on one of my pages. Actually, I probably got 7,000 followers right now that are going to know the 7th Ward hasn't had a grocery store for 20 years. What is going on? I'm just, I always think that things don't surprise me, but I'm telling you, I'm really surprised by this one.
Yeah.
So, Sharon, Bryson, here we go to the end of the show already. And I want to have you again on the show soon. And I'll tell you, next week won't be soon enough for me. I want Dorian to come on. I want to talk to him about the same issues. I want you to have a blessed Memorial weekend with your family and, of course, the campaign. And I'm going to pray that your campaign is successful and that things begin to happen, because a 30, 40-year plan to get a grocery store in the 7th Ward is like insane. It's crazy. It's unfortunate. It's sad. It's almost criminal, actually. And I don't think that any citizens in Chicago should stand for any one of our wards to be in that kind of condition.
Thank you, Deb.
You're welcome, Sharon. You have a wonderful weekend. And do you have any, can you give us that number again where people can call you to help your campaign?
Of course, 312-521-0747.
Excellent. So please call. Please see how you can help. If there's any donors out there, people in the community who just say, my gosh, something needs to be done, please call Sharon Bryson and Dorian Myricus and help them and volunteer and donate and do whatever you need to do to help the 7th Ward get that grocery store ASAP and to continue forward as they run a campaign here over the next 5 months looking for brand new leadership in the 7th Ward. Sharon, thank you so much again, and let's stay in touch.
Thank you, Deb. Talk to you soon.
Okay, you take care. Bye-bye. And thank you all for listening to my show. This is Deb Gordills, and I will talk to you again tomorrow. Thank you again for listening. Bye.
Sueño Americano newspaper. Best newspaper in analysis in the state of Illinois. With over 20,000 copies in each edition, El Sueño Americano is available in all versions. El Sueño Americano Lake County, El Sueño Americano Pilsen, El Sueño Americano Southeast, El Sueño Americano Aurora, and Sooner in many more regions. El Sueño Americano, the other side of news. The best analysis in regional, state, and national politics. El Sueño Americano is your alternative information in championnews.net. The conservative voice for Illinois news and commentary on education, pensions, and